is Bridge Prep. Brandon Yan is a proven startup executive who loves discovering and developing new business opportunities. He has extensive strategy, business development, operations, and entrepreneurial experience from starting his own business in college to advising both Fortune 500 companies and startups throughout his career. Brandon holds a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from West Virginia and an MBA from Haas School of Business at University of California, Berkeley. Currently, Brandon is a VP at SavingStar. Welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Now, Brandon, you've worked at a number of companies in the startup space. Can you share some of the similarities and challenges you faced among the different roles?
Yeah, sure. So I would say working in the startup space is an interesting opportunity, but at the same time, very challenging. And it's definitely for people who are open to taking risks, because what you're doing when you work for a startup is you're basically making a bet that, here's a company, here's an idea that hopefully is, as big as something that you could change the world or change the behavior on something. And for example, like what I've worked thus far with Evernote, with Datalogix, and currently with a company called SavingStar. And there's similarities in it's kind of exciting, all of them. When you join, it's the opportunity to really, like I said, build something big, whether it's kind of productivity improvement with Evernote or helping to make marketing dollars run better with Datalogix, or helping the people save money with SavingStar. All good ideas on kind of making things simpler and more efficient, using whether it be mobile phones or the internet to solve problems or data to match things. But at the same time, you're a small company and you have limited resources. And I think working at a startup is really interesting because your role is much less defined. Rather than you go work for a big company, they say, well, here's your task, here's what you need to do, now go do that. The interesting and fun thing about working at a startup is that you basically need to do whatever it takes to help that company grow. So my roles have been. My title has been in business development, but I've done a variety of different things, whether that's helping with operations or helping with sales or helping with the company's strategy and direction. So you just have to be really flexible. I would say that's probably, the big takeaway in wanting to work for startups. And I think it's interesting because you get to do a variety of different things and wear a bunch of different hats.
Sure. So you wear a lot of hats. You said your role might not be defined. I know that's something that you hear of a lot of people dealing with when working with startups. How do you manage that? I mean, is that ever stressful?
Yeah. So I mean, I think startups are meant for certain personalities, probably more so than others. I think some people like to have really defined roles, and for those types of people, there's nothing wrong with that. I think working at a big company is more structured. You can follow the rules, and you can go with that. It's more stressful not knowing or being not as certain about your future or where this company is going to go. But that's what I think what's stressful is also exciting too. I mean, there's the saying is the more you're not going to get a reward unless you take a risk. So the big opportunities, the companies like Facebook or Google, at one point they were just small startups as well, and the people who took the risk thought they had a great idea and pursued that and went after the dream, they succeeded. At the same time, there's a lot of companies you don't hear about in the startup world that that try and they don't succeed. So there's obviously risk, and I think it's the smart thing is to make sure you're taking a calculated risk and talking to other people and feeling like this is an idea that a lot of people support or would be customers of. But yeah, it's stressful. There's a lot of ups and downs. One day you might be super happy because you just signed on some top tier customer, and the other day it might be really rough because you couldn't get the attention of whatever customer because you're just a little guy, and these big companies move really slow. So you have to wait and hope that the company doesn't run out of money before you get your big deal in place.
Sure. So high risk, high reward, but make sure that risk is a calculated one.
Yeah.
Great. So Talk to me about how you manage your time and priorities amid all of your roles. Do you have any tips to share?
Yeah, so I mean, I think time management is probably one of the most important things you can do, whether you're working for a startup or just in general, whether you want to try to have a healthy work-life balance. So I mean, the things that I do, I kind of generally try to stay on a schedule of some sorts. So, in the morning, I'll make sure I kind of cover all, especially being on the West Coast. A lot of the times I'm working with people on the East Coast. So my mailbox is already full, so I try to take care of my email as much as I can right at the beginning of the day. I try to block off times to do specific tasks. Email something that, if you're constantly responding to it all day, that could be, that could take up your entire day. So I try to just prioritize what's important and what's not. At the same time, I try to, being somebody who's helping to drive new business, and, I've had a lot of mentors and people helping me along the way. I try to also, save time to help other people as much as I can. But I would say it's really just figuring out what's important and what's not, and then prioritizing those things. Like, for example, even from a personal life experience, I'd like to try to work out a couple times a week. If I don't make that a priority, work could obviously take over that every single day. So it's just a matter of, okay, I'm going to schedule this time for this period, and kind of go from there.
Great. We mentioned that you have a bachelor's in industrial engineering. I'm curious how your consulting and engineering background shaped you and prepared you to handle your current role at SavingStar.
Yeah. So I think that for me, even though right now I'm not necessarily performing the functions of what an engineer would do, I think studying engineering was probably one of the best decisions that I've made. I was always very strong in math and science, so it felt like, for me at the time, coming out of high school, engineering seemed like a great degree to be in. I studied industrial engineering, which is very useful. I think just even in daily life, it's all about kind of making things very efficient and productive and process improvement, which is something that you can, I think, relate to not only in the work world, but just in your daily life. So I think that was a really great foundation, and engineering is a major that really helps you become more of a problem solver and just gives you a mindset of how to think through different things. Going into consulting was, I felt, for me, kind of the natural next step. Even though I studied engineering, my interest was much more specific to business. So going into management consulting was, for me, really beneficial in multiple ways. So one was it gave me tons of exposure to, kind of really complex business problems. You're working with a team on all of your different projects. For me, I grew up in West Virginia. I didn't really travel around very much. It was the opportunity to travel, to work with a lot of big, interesting companies, and help them solve problems, whether it was helping to, grow a new business in a new market or launch a new product, or, in down economic times, it was, how do we help them cut costs, be more efficient with their supply chain or with their, purchasing or whatever it may be. So it was really, I think, engineering gave me a foundation for problem solving. I think consulting gave me a foundation just for business strategy in general. And it really prepared me, like I said, wanting to do something that was more entrepreneurial throughout my career. That was a great foundation to move towards that direction, because I felt like, right now, if I'm in a position to start my own business or work within a small startup, that background and foundation, engineering and consulting, really helps me think through different problems. And in addition, it's like, if we're going to launch a product, who are the competitors out there? How big is the market? What are other kind of parallel things that we could be doing in association with that? So I think those two were a great foundation for what I'm doing today.
Great. So tell us a little bit about, what you are doing today. Tell us about your path at SavingStar. What initially attracted you to it, and how have your professional goals evolved since joining?
So, I mean, like I said, the engineering consulting background helped. For me, it was wanting to move towards kind of a technology startup type of company. So it was, going to business school was the first step in doing that. For me, it was I I wanted to be in the tech industry, so being in the San Francisco area was going to be really beneficial for that. So being at Berkeley, I really kind of just hit the ground running and trying to build a network of people. It is a lot about kind of who you know, and so for me, it was trying to set up speakers with venture capitalists and entrepreneurs, and talking to various startups when I was out here as a student. That kind of built the foundation for what I could do, once I got back into the work world after business school. So I mean, what I'm doing today is I was at a company called DataLogix before SavingStar. They recently just got bought by Oracle. So that, it was a company, it was a startup experience that worked out really well. And what they were doing is connecting online advertising to in-store sales. And what I was doing is basically trying to find partners that we could then work with to really help us grow the business, or companies that could use our service in a much better way. So it was building partnerships with companies like Facebook, with Twitter, with Google, some of the big publishers out here. And then when I decided to leave there and take a more senior role at SavingStar, it was a similar type of opportunity. So SavingStar distributes paper coupon or digital coupons for grocery and consumer packaged goods products. And the interesting thing there is they are getting a lot of loyalty card data from stores. So what I basically took that job to build a new business on how we could leverage that data to really help us grow as a company and be more strategic towards who our customers are. So like the brands like Pepsi's and Clorox's and things like that of the world that we're working with, we could help provide better insights to them so they could measure and target their advertising campaigns and marketing campaigns in a better way. So it's really interesting, and for me, it's been such a change from working closely with teams on consulting projects and traveling with all of them to my role at SavingStar now, where I'm actually the only person out here on the West Coast. So the company's based in Boston, and they're looking for somebody to build these partnerships out here and to basically lead the direction of this new part of the business. So it's I think while it's I think challenging to some degree being apart from the other people, I think the important thing is being transparent and communicative with your team, and I think it's also exciting. It's exciting to lead a new piece of business, and I'm hoping that we can turn this into another successful startup experience.
Great. I want to go back to what you mentioned about your business school years. You talked about how important it is then to build your network during those years, and you hear about that so often, but networking doesn't really come naturally to everyone. So I'm wondering if you could share one piece of advice for improving your networking skills.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and for me, it's something that I've worked on over time. I mean, I was a math whiz as a kid, and I studied engineering, so those two things aren't naturally associated with being really outgoing or strong in networking. For me, it was when I was young, I set a goal to I want to be running my own business. I want to be a successful business person, and what are the attributes? I would read books around people who have done that, have been successful, what they've done, and I basically mapped out, okay, here's the things that I need to do, here's what I'm strong at, here's what I need to improve in, and I just pushed myself to be better in the areas that I needed to improve it. So if I went to some event around data and marketing technology, rather than kind of go and listen to a speaker, I would, go out of my way to make sure I talked to the other people around. Or in business school in particular, it was really great because if you can get into a top school, you're surrounded by really, really smart, intelligent people. And, it's just amazing what you can learn from the people around you. And especially for me, wanting to stay in technology, wanting to stay in the Bay Area, the friendships that I made while I was in business school in particular, are invaluable, because now I have friends that work at every other big major company that are doing, awesome, successful things. And especially me, I'm in a role where I'm trying to build partnerships with people. That's been very important, to have these connections, to have these friendships. And I think that, while it may not be as natural to some people, I think that it's definitely an important thing if you want to be kind of seen as a leader in the business world. You have to be a salesperson, whether that's natural to you or not. And you kind of have to have a really well-rounded set of skills. So I would say it's an important thing, whether it's natural or not. I think it's important that people should push themselves to try to do that.
Sure, make a set list of goals and priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So talk to me a little bit about the qualities you look for when you're considering joining a startup. For example, do you look at how much capital they've raised, the market potential, the business idea? How do you approach this decision?
Yeah, so I would say that I look at all of those things. For me, it's the most important thing is, do I believe in the idea, first of all? Is this a great idea? Is this innovative? Is this unique? Because, what you don't want to do is, somebody's going to be the next social network. Well, Facebook, I think, has already kind of got that locked down. So I think that, you got to find something that's innovative. And then, when you meet, I think the team is very important. Because, is it a good idea? There's plenty of good ideas. I think the more important thing is can this group of people actually execute this? Execution is much more harder than having an idea. So do you think that these people are really smart? Do you think that they have the right vision? Do you think that you would get along with them? I mean, that's also something that's very important. As over my time in working, you get along with certain people better than others. And if you're going to spend, hours and hours and hours every day with these people, you want to be friends with them. You want to get along with them. You want to be able to work well with them. You want to be able to share ideas with them. So I would say, it's the idea, it's the market, it's the team. And for me specifically at this point, as I've gotten a little bit more experienced and older, it's the role. So I want to make sure I'm in a position where I can really help to drive a lot of that growth in the company. I don't want to, I want to make sure it's the right fit for what I want to do. And then when it comes to, how much money they've raised or things like that, I think it's a kind of source of validation. So, some venture capitalist has decided that they want to put $20 million into this company. That's good that somebody else has validated this idea for you, and, it's less of a risk. So I think that's good, but I think at the end of the day, there's, depending on especially your view of working in a startup, the earlier you get in, kind of the more upside that you potentially have. But at the same time, there's a lot more risk. The later you go in, there's less of a risk. This company they've already raised a bunch of money. They can probably pay you better. You go in early, you're taking more of a risk. They don't have much money to pay you, and you're hoping that this succeeds and you can be a part of that. But at the same time, that may not work out. So I would say different people probably have different views on the amount of money raised. I think it's important to validate an idea and to see, what the potentially could be. But I think at the same time, it really just depends on the individual. For me, I think that's less of a big deal if they've raised $100 million versus $10 million, because I think if they already raised 100, they're already well on their way to what they think they want to be. If they're earlier on, I think you can come in and play a bigger role and shape what that company's going to be. But again, at a higher risk level, though.
Great. Speaking of getting in early, you started a company when you were quite young. Can you tell us a bit about the experience of starting a company in college and maybe where this entrepreneurial drive came from?
Yeah, so I did start something when I was in college. So growing up, my dad ran his own business. So I saw that lifestyle, and I always just wanted to do that. I always wanted to emulate that. I grew up in a small town, so for me, it wasn't, I had the opportunity to kind of stay there and take over his business. But for me, it was what can I do in a bigger scale and, a bigger city, kind of, move my talents towards something that's going to be, ideally world-changing in some way. So I've, like I said, always had this entrepreneurial interest, and I feel like I have a good, skill of kind of identifying good ideas. So, I was working with a friend who had created an automated drink dispensing system for a senior project. He was an electrical engineer, and I thought, this would be a great idea to build a business plan for. And I think there's lots of places that could use something like this. So there was a business plan competition at the time. I hadn't worked really in business, but I did a bunch of reading on what goes into a business plan competition or a business plan. You have a marketing plan, you have a financial plan, you have, what's the market size, who are the competitors. So I basically just wrote that plan. We built a prototype of the actual product. Went through the whole process, submitting. We went through and did a presentation for everybody, and we ended up winning the competition. So for me, that was a really exciting time. It was, at an early stage in my career, looking back. I was still in college even at the time. And for me, that was where I wanted to go. But, with any kind of entrepreneurial type of experience, I'd mentioned team earlier and how important that is. My teammate, at the time, he didn't really want to pursue this as a company. So, it was something that, I had to basically, after we went through, built this whole thing, basically had to abandon because, I didn't have the team I needed to basically build it. So, that's another, I think, lesson that I learned early on is, even if you want to do something on your own, you need to really find a team of complementary skill sets. So for me, I had to have that, that technical engineer who could write computer programming better than I could. And I could help and, talk to people and create more of a business around it. But we needed both of those skills in order to really go forward as a company. So while it was a great, I think, learning experience early on, then something that I'll take to, when I eventually do my own thing, it was also kind of a tough lesson to learn. While, it's both exciting and tough at the same time. And I think that's just generally what's going to happen with startups. You have to be ready for those ups and downs. But I think the ups are probably a lot more exciting than you'll ever get working at a big company. But, at the same time, it's, you have to keep, if you don't try, you never learn.
Great. So first company ever, and you're already winning competitions. That's got to be encouraging.
Yeah, it definitely was. It wasn't the result we were looking for, but definitely was encouraging as a start.
Great. Well, Brendan, that's all the time we have for today, but I wanted to thank you so much for joining us, and I wish you the best of luck.
All right. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time as well.